So let's talk a little bit about testing as a topic, all right? So I've written this little application here. It's very contrived. It's obviously similar to our part number problem we had back at the beginning of the semester. And we're going to pretend like this is a file on disk. My job is to create a dictionary from that so that I can look up costs and description of different things in the list, all right? And I wrote this and I haven't tried anything. I have no idea if this works. So how would I test it to make sure that it works? Well, there's a number of things I could do, but probably the most straightforward is I will call build dictionary so that it creates the dictionary for me. And I'm not going to use PyTest, and we'll see why in a few minutes, or maybe we won't. There's only so much that PyTest really does for you, and I can replicate some of that here on my own. So I'll say if, I don't need a paren, this is not C++, retrieve cost of 2737 is not equal to 237, then I'm going to say print cost retrieval failed. And we're going to put something in here. We're going to say errors equals 0. Okay? So here I'll say ++ errors. Nope, that's C++ again. All right. Now I'm going to say if retrieve description of 3125 is not equal to kitchen faucet, and I put a paren back there. I don't need it. Print description retrieval failed. Errors + = 1. And then I'll say, whoops, if errors equals 0, print test passed, else, why did you go clear to the left? Oh, because I am clear to the left, sorry. Print test failed. Okay? Now, you may ask, based on the assignment, I've only retrieved one cost. What about the cost for these others? Well, what I'm really testing is the functionality of my code, not the completeness of my dictionary. And so if one retrieval works, I have reasonably good reason to believe that all retrievals will work. Although, now that I think about it, maybe it wouldn't hurt to have two of these. Okay? So maybe I'll say 3115, and that should be equal to 200. And so likewise we'll do another one of these. And we'll make that one 2736. 2736. And this should be oak chair. And so in my test, because I'm mainly just concerned about making sure that the mechanics work, I'm not going to test every entry in the list. Rather, I just want to make sure that I get expected results on a few of them. And so, let's see. Yeah, let's try that. Let's write that out. And we'll do Python testing. Whoops, I'm in the wrong directory. How did I do that? cd testing. Okay. Python testing.py. Missing parentheses and call to print. So you will notice that right off the bat, my test failed because the test itself is miswritten. So the first thing I have to do is make sure that my test is rock solid. And it would be really good if I did that. So I'm still debugging my test at this point. Build dictionary, missing one required positional argument, list. Really? How about that? I did say I had to pass in the products list, so we'll pass in products. And that would allow me to have different lists, right? Okay, so I'm still debugging my test. Whoa, entert is not defined. Believe it or not, that was inadvertent. Entert is on line 14. Entry. Okay, so now I'm kind of debugging the application, right? Apparently my test is at least running, but my application was miswritten. So write that out, run again. Invalid literal for int with base 10, 237 oak table 237. Ah, interesting. So that says that this part of my application is miswritten because it doesn't want to go to, it doesn't know where to stop. And so I need to say int in entry 6 colon part end. Okay, we getting closer? Who knows? Could not convert string to float, $237. That's interesting. So what that means is where I had hoped that my +2 would step past the $, it wasn't enough. So I need to put +3 in there. Okay, let's try it again. Dict object has no attribute find. Oh, all right. So let's look up Python access dictionary. Print this dict. So get, not find. Now, as it turns out, from the description here, it doesn't matter whether I use this format or get. Why did I try to use find instead of what I really meant was get? Not that one. That one's fine. It's here. It actually has to do with some C++ holdovers, okay? For the moment, just accept the fact that I'm doing it this way. It doesn't really matter. In fact, I could do, I'll rewrite it. Dictionary, subpart number, sub1, dictionary, subpart number, sub0. Okay. Let's see, did I write that out? I did. Cost retrieval failed, description retrieval failed, description retrieval failed, test failed. Well, at least I know that my code isn't working, right? And it appears that my test may be working, or maybe it's not. What could I do at this point to make life better? Well, the first thing is, what went wrong? I have no idea. And so probably the best thing to do would be to expand on these error messages. Expected 237 got retrieve cost 2737. Now there's a couple problems with that statement right there, but let's start there and see what we get, okay? Cost retrieval failed. Expected 237 got, oops, I forgot to put my little F there, didn't I? So that's not a very useful message. Got oak table. Well, that certainly is not what I wanted at all. So, cost retrieval, it says part number sub 0, and I expected this to have, I put this backwards. That's one problem. Okay. So my cost is actually at location 1 and my description is at location 0. So let's try that and see what happens. Description retrieval failed, but my cost didn't. Okay, so let's go back to this for a moment. If this one had still failed, I would still have to expand the message, right? And so what I really want to do is I want to say for test pair in, and I'm going to say 2737, 237, and so that's this number and this number, right? And then I'm going to do 3115, 200, because that's this number and this number. I'm going to say retrieved cost equals that. If retrieved cost is not equal to test pair sub 0, so that's this number right here, then I'm going to say cost retrieval failed, expected test pair sub 0 got retrieved cost. Now, why do I not want to call it again? Perhaps there's no really good reason. Maybe it saves me a few clock cycles. But this way, I know that I'm seeing the same thing here as I saw here. What if retrieving the cost changed it? I need to indent that, by the way. What if my retrieve cost function gave different results each time? That would be even more confusing. So at least this way I can track it down one at a time. All right. So now I don't need two calls to retrieve cost. I've got a single one because of this loop. Well, pretty obviously I'm going to want to rewrite this test in much the same way, right? But let's check first to make sure that one works. All right. So description retrieval failed, description retrieval failed. So it appears that my test is working down to here, and it has validated retrieve cost for this table. So now we're going to say for, and being Python, there's other ways we could do this. We could say part number description, and I know I'm shortcutting description, in so we'll remind 3125, and we'll just go grab this directly so I don't have to type it again, and we'll get 2736. And of course I should be copying them from up here, right, because that's my source. So now I say if retrieve desk part number is not equal to desk, then description retrieval failed. Expected expected desk got whoops, I missed this other, let's see, whoops, yes, okay, I forgot that. Okay, retrieved desk equals if retrieved desk is not equal to desk got, and incidentally, I have just illustrated another danger with these long names. I'm using long names, retrieved cost and retrieve cost. They're only different by one letter. It's really easy to confuse those, so I probably should name my variables better, all right? But at least we've gotten this written. There's still things that are lacking here, but we're getting closer. All right, so let's try that. Expected desk got retrieved desk. How about that? That is one of my favorite errors, is forgetting the F there. Okay, expected oak chair got oak chay. Now, we can see the missing R, and so we can see that the desk should be desk end. And part of the problem here is I'm indexing these strings as if I was in C++. Python obviously indexes them differently. So, what did I do? I didn't save it correctly. Okay, now we try it. Whoops. Where? Line 17. Oh, I see. Did I fix that? Let's see. Okay. Expected kitchen faucet got kitchen faucet. Now that's a hard thing to see unless you notice there are two spaces here and I only wanted one space, or actually no spaces. So sometimes what you do on things like this, especially where you're looking at strings, expected, and you put some delimiter around the string. Okay, and now we can see that it says I've got a space in front of it. So now I'm going to say description equals part n plus 2, and cost retrieval failed. How did cost retrieval fail? That used to be working. What did I break? Huh. Got retrieved cost. Well, let's so I did something here. This should be test pair sub 0, and this should be test pair sub 1. Don't know quite how I did that. Now it says test passed. So far that's really good, all right? But is my test complete? Well, that kind of depends. What if the user requests a number that's not in the dictionary? Should I test that case? We'll assume we know 9999 is an illegal number, and we'll make 999 be the cost. Key error 9999. Well, all right. It seems like retrieve cost should check for a valid number first, shouldn't it? In fact, retrieve desk should also. And so we want to say if part number in dictionary, and we're going to say return val equals return val equals incorrect part number. And so now we can say return val. Interestingly enough, I've got the wrong number there too. Was nobody going to tell me that? Test pair sub 1. Expected 9999 got incorrect part number. Well, that's not a very good test, is it? Because the test didn't fail. It did what it's supposed to do. Can I put incorrect part number here? I don't know. Let's see about that. Okay, test passed. That's reasonable. So your tests should also include cases that you know are going to fail, if you can see something that's going to fail. And then you can update your code. So I had the test here, updated my code to fit it, then I had to update the test a little bit so it still passed the test. Sometimes when you're testing unusual conditions like this, they may come outside of your main loop. You may have to have a separate test for that. In this case, it worked out all right. Likewise, we're going to need to rewrite this one, aren't we? So let's start on this. So I'm just going to copy this line here, right? I'm going to copy this line here. Return val equals dictionary part number 0. Return val. Okay, good enough. But what have I said before about common code? As it turns out, the only thing that's different between these two routines is that right there. Okay? So what we should really have is a common function here, get dictionary entry, and have have a part number and an index, which is going to be this number here. Now we can copy all of this into here, and all we have to do is replace that with index. And these two then become return get dictionary entry part number 0. Now I can copy this up here, get rid of all of those, and change that to 1. Now what's happened? I've just changed my code. I need to run my test again. Well, looks like we got a slight problem there. Kind of like, I always forget that colon, don't I? There we go, test passed. So anytime you update your test, you have to run it again. Anytime you update your program, you have to run the test again. And of course, normally the application would be in one file and the test would be in another file. I have them both in one file just for my own sake of ease. So at this point, when I add in part number, I don't know, 1224, what's part number 1224? Can somebody help me? Computer mouse 15. Do I need to retest? It's kind of an interesting question because my test is not going to look at computer mouse, is it? All I've done is I've changed the input file. However, there is a reason why I need to retest. Let's see what happens here. Test passed, that's fine. But what if when somebody was updating the file, they fat-fingered it? Floorboard. Okay, so they've made an error in the format here. When I try to test it, it still passes. And so now the question is, I've got a data integrity problem. Is there some way I can check for that? Because what's happened is, because I've hardwired this 6 right here, it's going to start reading the number right here. Well, that kind of comes back to this sort of thing we were doing in the first week or second week, whenever it was. Can I recognize that 345 is not a legal part number? Well, I don't know. And so in some ways, this is a very brittle format for my file. And maybe it's not the best of examples. And so that's something else. When you're looking at formats for files, how can you make the format checkable, testable, okay? And so coming back to that, well, if I'm going to assume that everything starts with part number, maybe I should check that. The only place I can do that is in Build Dictionary. That information is gone by the time I get down to my test. And so what I should do here is, if entry sub 0 colon 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think, is not equal to part number, print warning, badly formatted entry. And then we would say entry. And of course, I need parens and an F. And remember about how hard it is to read things sometimes? Let's put delimiters around that. Now, when I run it, this came out of the application itself. It doesn't come out of the test. And so this is defensive programming. This is if I want to make sure that my database has integrity. I suppose I could write a separate test down here, or maybe I just write it as part of my application because I want to know when I run the application if the database is corrupted, because my test doesn't check that in and of itself. So these are thoughts that you have to put in. Can I test it, or do I have to put it in as defensive programming? And so in this case, we'll put the T back in there, and warning message goes away, and everybody's happy. But remember, I still don't have to add an entry in my test for each one of these, unless there is some reason, and if there was some reason why I was doubting the contents of my file, then I suppose I would have to test every entry. But at some point you have to assume that something is correct, because I hate to have to update my test every time I add an entry to my data file. That would be just way too much work. But in this case, if I implement a function def, what should we call this one? Well, let's call it insert item. And we get part number, description, there I spelled it out that time, and cost. So now I'm going to say, I need to say global dictionary, because I'm going to modify the dictionary. I'm going to say dictionary sub part number equals list of description cost. So now, how do I test my code? Well, obviously I'm going to have to write a call to insert item to make sure that it still works, right? And one thing I can do is I can just say insert item, part number, what will we call this one? 1113. Actually, this is where I should use my illegal part number, because somebody might use part number 1113 someday. So now I need to say insert item 9999 bad item 999. And then I would have to do a retrieval again to see if it works. Perhaps. Yeah, I probably should. So then I'm going to have to say, I'm going to have to extract this and put it down here. Yep, that didn't work. And I can rerun my test. Test passed. Good. However, there's one thing I want you to notice here. I've got duplicated code again. And so perhaps as part of my test, I should, in fact, if we look at it, this is, all of this is pretty much duplicated, isn't it? So what I could do is rewrite these so I have commonality, and I'd have a function I could call here. So let's try breaking that out. This is called refactoring, by the way. Just test part number expected, and okay, and I need to put in which function I'm supposed to call. So retrieval function. So now I can copy this equals retrieval function I misspelled it, that's why it's not completing. Part number, and if retrieved, and I should name it retrieved value, but for the moment we're going to leave this alone, and we're going to say expected. Our message is kind of ambiguous now. Let's see what happens. expected got retrieved cost. Still not out of the woods yet, so I want to rename retrieved cost, and we're going to call this actual, and use search and replace so that you don't mistype anything and so that you get all the occurrences of it. And that's the reason not to use I instead of actual, because if I was replacing I, well, there's an I there, there's an I there, there's lots of I's around that I don't want to replace. There's one more little gotcha here, and that is I need to say global errors, okay? I think this works, but I don't know that it works. We'll find out, won't we? Just test test pair sub 0, and I think I need a paren there. Test pair sub 1, and retrieve cost. So, well, we'll go ahead and rewrite both of these because I'm going to have to rewrite this one anyway. And if it's broken, there's not that much to fix. Because I wrote these differently, this one is now part number. This one is now desk. And this is retrieve desk. And, you know, I guess I've still got some more writing to do, don't I? This should be just test 9999. Add item. I'm repeating code, aren't I? Is that okay? Well, that's what you have to decide. Is it clear enough what I'm doing here, or should I make a variable equal to 999 and a description equal to bad item? That's kind of a judgment call at this point. But I've modified my test, so I have to rerun it, right? Test passed. Not bad. Now, in fact, over here, in order to test my insertion completely, I really should put $999 retrieve cost, like that. Test passed. Okay, so I've talked to you a lot about testing. Again, testing is not typically testing every entry in here. It's typically testing some representative cases. If I figure out something that might break it, like using an illegal part number, okay, I may have to write a special test for that, or in this case I didn't have to. There are other things that may need to be tested, but hopefully you can kind of get the idea here of how testing works and why you're doing all of this, okay? That turned out a lot longer than I intended, but I hope it's useful. Thanks for watching.